right, welcome everybody to the Daily Huddle. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando, Spiritual Matters Thursdays. Today we're talking about tooting your own horn and your relationship with self-recognition. Like I said, this culture does not celebrate people who celebrate themselves. It's a little bit of the tall poppy syndrome, that whole thing about, the music sounds better when somebody else is playing it. And well, let's talk about that because false, first of all, false. And secondly, self-recognition and tooting your own horn can look a lot of different ways. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the first step to self-recognition is to acknowledge yourself and this comes from a place of authorship. It comes from a place of being the creator of your life, right? And so authoring your own experience includes your achievements, your effort, your milestones, your benchmarks, the metrics that you've achieved, the metrics you have not achieved. All of that comes with the territory. And if you're going to take the blame, you're going to take the credit too, right? And so self-recognition is a matter of owning that you are the creator of your own life. It's not just about bragging. It's not just about, everybody look at me. That's what it's become, which is why people have a hard time swallowing, just accepting in other people or are reluctant to do it themselves. But self-recognition isn't just about bragging and about taking up space. It's also about owning your effort and your achievements and metrics and benchmarks and so forth, and your standards, right? So I want you to think back to who you were when you were, let's say, 4 years old. Put that picture in mind. You, what you looked like, how tall you were, the clothes you wore, the people who you played with, who was important in your life, what was important. If you didn't get it when you were 4. For me, it was Saturday morning cartoons. The world would end if I did not get my Saturday morning cartoons. Lord have mercy. What's this world coming to, right? And then the things I would throw tantrums about would change. For example, bump a cartoon in the morning. What? No, I'm going to sleep. And so I want you to connect that to how your own metrics of joy, of pleasure, of satisfaction, of achievement, even of what it means to live a good life have changed all throughout your life, right? Today, you may have some money goals. Today, you may have some relationship goals. Today, you may have some fitness goals. It's not just about how pretty the dress looks or how good the pants fit. It's about, or the brand or whatever, maybe for some of you are snooty like that. But for the most of us, it's really about, do I feel good in my body? Not just aesthetics, not just brand name, but me, myself, and I. Do I feel good in the skin that I'm in? And if I don't, what am I going to do about it? So I'm curious about you guys. Was there a time in your past when somebody who was a big personality or who took up space felt like an imposition, felt like a braggadocious, obnoxious, etc.? Or did you think, wow, I wish I could do that? Put a 1 in the chat if it was obnoxious, 2 in the chat if it was like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I had the nerve. I want to see where you are with it. Where am I? Oh, 1 and 2. Okay. All right. Okay. So some ones. Can you let me then transfer this to something else. Did you feel the same way about rich people? Like rich people are jerks or selfish or only care about one thing? If that's true, continue to put a 1 in the chat. Greedy, don't care about others, don't care who they have to step on, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have any negative connotations about rich people? Did you have any negative connotations about people who took up a lot of space, who didn't mind being loud, who didn't mind people looking at them, who were okay in their own body and their own creativity and didn't mind you looking, that kind of thing, right? If you have a one for that, if you're saying, yeah, that was kind of obnoxious and kind of selfish, et cetera, then you would understand why you wouldn't want to do that. Because you don't want to be subject to the same judgment that you dole out to other people. If the way that I'm judging someone who takes up space is that they're selfish and that they're obnoxious and that they're braggadocious, of course I'm not going to do that. If I'm judging somebody who has money as somebody who is selfish and greedy and doesn't care who they step on, I'm not going to get rich because I don't want to be a selfish, greedy, obnoxious, don't care who I step on person. See, and so what we cannot do, just like in the fitness industry, they say you cannot out train a bad diet. I don't know if you've heard that. Lord have mercy. I could choke him when he says it. In the same way, you cannot out behavior your identity and your connection to being a good person. If your connection to being a good person is you're selfless and you don't make a big deal of yourself, et cetera, then stepping out of that role and taking up space and being visible and getting money is tantamount to being a bad person. And we're not going to do that, darling. Not on the subconscious level. This is one of the things that I talk about in Upgrade Your Subconscious, a program that I a course that I lead, that I created, is that you will not be able to out behave an outdated identity, a bad identity, or an ineffective identity. Let's not call it bad, an ineffective identity. If your identity is, in order for me to be a good person, I have to be humble and I have to keep my head down and just, take my drills and keep on moving, then anybody who does the opposite would be considered a bad person in that definition. And you wouldn't want to do that. So you install self-sabotaging behaviors in order to keep you in line with the good person identity, instead of going out there, even though your mouth says that you want to achieve a certain number in terms of revenue, in terms of wealth, et cetera. Even though your mouth says, I'm going to be empowered and I'm going to be confident, and your subconscious is saying, no, you're not. Sit down. We don't want to be obnoxious. So stop it. No, we don't want to be greedy and selfish. So stop it. And then you'll install those self-sabotaging behaviors. All right. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what are the negative connotations of tooting your own horn. I'll start, and then you tell me what yours is. In my culture, in my family, we have a saying, it's better to have money than to show money. It's better to have money than to show money. Because there are a lot of people who just are very, flashy, and they have the latest brands and they drive the latest car and they in the big house and that. But when you look underneath it, they're struggling to make ends meet. They don't have a pot to piss in, that kind of thing. But also, people who show money are subject to muggings, kidnappings, people that take advantage of them, people that set you up to fail, et cetera, et cetera. And so in my culture, it was like, you don't tell anybody how much money you got, how much money you're making. You don't wear ostentatious jewelry. You just don't, because you're setting yourself up for hurt and damage that you're just calling attention to yourself. So that's a belief that I have worked really, really hard to overcome, because while it may be factually true in some circumstances, can you see how that can stop you from owning your stage? Can you see how that can stop you from owning your greatness, your brilliance, because you don't want to call attention to yourself, right? So what are some other beliefs that you have about visibility and about owning your space and tooting your own horn? I'm curious. If you've ever been reticent to own your authority, to own your
to me, it's more like not believing that I take up space, believing that I am deserving of tooting a horn. So, for example, my daughter used to always call me a badass. And I said, no, I happen to ride a motorcycle. That does not make me a badass. And we were sitting at a restaurant once, and she was sitting across from me. And she finally said, Mom. And then she started listing off my accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, that is badass. And I was like, that person you described is badass. And everything you described is me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So when you take a step back and you see yourself as other people see you,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, after that conversation, my paradigm kind of shifted a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, I need to remind myself that this is how other people see me.
Yeah. Yes. I'm gonna say that how other people see you can be useful, and it can also be a detriment. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the inherent value in it in itself, in as much as it empowers you, in as much as it gives you additional data and feedback about yourself. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it can be a tricky little spiral too, in terms of looking for external validation and so forth. So, we put it in the
Yeah.
right. But I love that your daughter was like, let me just remind you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Let me just. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's great. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you are a badass, dagnabbit. Florence, you're up.
Yes. Grand rising.
All right.
I see. I sometimes tooting your own horn. I have seen where it can be obnoxious. Um, like if when you can see that the tooting of the horn is coming from a place of actually trying to fill some sort of inadequacy. Like, I mean, I actually have an example of someone in my life who um who toots their own horn, but I can see that this person is coming from a place of like lack, like inadequacy. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel that person is not matured,
Mm-hmm.
not evolved, and in their 50, like even in this it close to 60, but is behaving in a place of like a teenager, like yes. And
Yeah.
that person, every time, like an example, your husband takes you for lunch and you come back and you have to tell the whole staff that you drank $100 bottle of wine, and the price of the meal, and and in a way it's showing that, well, you have trying to prove maybe you have a loving relationship with your husband, that he comes and takes you to lunch, and that you drank all this, eat at the expensive food and all of this. I do see this as coming from a place of inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't really feel, I don't know, it's like I can't describe this, like put all the description to it, but I feel that this person is just bragging, and I don't see that it's actually coming from the best place. But
Right.
I do see that I see where bragging or tooting your own horn can come from a place of being fulfilled or being matured. And so I do see a difference. And because I see a difference, I can toot my horn because I can see where it's coming from, a place from a centered place, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing who you are, and and just being. who you are, and tooting your horn. I can see that. So I do see a difference.
Yeah, thank you for that distinction, because there are really, to use Michelle's daughter's words, real badasses out there that are changing worlds, changing industries, elevating standards, and we expect them to just kind of like be regular schmegular average. No, Simone Biles has moves named after her. There are things that no other human being can do, and when she walks out there, she's like, "I am Simone B. Biles." Kidding. She's not kidding. That's facts.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I like that you say that it's like, yeah, owning your space, owning what you've done. David Goggins does the same thing. Beyonce does the same thing. Beyonce's been, and then you can say a lot of things about the machine that is the music industry, et cetera, et cetera. But the longevity of her career and how she's taken charge of it, et cetera, those things are indisputable. You can't argue facts.
Right.
And so the idea of saying, here's what I did, here's what I've done, here's how long I've done it, here's what it took, et cetera, that's not bragging. That's a biography.
Yes. Yes.
And so we have to give credit where credit is due. I love it. Laura, I saw Ingrid's hand up, and then I saw Laura's hand up. Ingrid, do you want to come up?
Yeah, I had it up for me. I was going to respond to what Florence said. Sometimes when people speak like the individual she was talking about, sometimes we don't know where people are coming from. And I guess it's always best to look at ourselves rather than look at others, because maybe that person came from a place of lacking. Maybe she grew up in a place of lacking. So now to be able to do that is a great accomplishment for her. She may not be bragging, but she's proud of the ladder she's climbed and where she has reached. We never know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
totally.
yeah, that's why. But there's always like that thin line, though, coming from self, not that to observe others, but to come from self.
Yes.
There's always that thin line of tooting your own horn or bragging, self-esteem or whatever, being too much, too extra, sexy or sleazy. There's always that thin line, love and hate. There's always that thin line to cross over. But we have to evaluate ourselves more or less and not look at others, because we don't know where they're coming from. We don't know their story, but we know ours.
Yes,
right?
That's true. And I'm glad that you brought this up.
Yeah, just like I am a retired correction officer. And when people hear it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're a badass." I've heard that term. It's like unthought of. It's like they couldn't believe or can't believe, even when I was, I guess, my age, my race, my sex, all those things combined. But it's just that, like, we just finished reading in Think and Grow Rich, and we have to write 5 or 10 attributes that we like about ourselves. And how her daughter listed those attributes to her, others will see it more in us than we see in ourselves. Sometimes it's so hard, like somebody said in our meeting a few minutes ago, it's hard to even find 5 or 3. But somebody else might say, "Oh my gosh, Ingrid, you're this, you're that, you were a single mother, you're da-da-da-da-da-da," and they might rattle off stuff. But to me, it's like, that was just sink or swim. I was in autopilot. I was just doing what I had to do, and I don't see it as being badass, but just doing what I have to do.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for bringing up the idea of looking at ourselves, because that was where I was going to go next. And that is that the entire physical universe is really a prism, Prism, a prism of your own consciousness. And just like right now, we are online, but you don't see the Wi-Fi connections, you don't see the Wi-Fi, the fiber optics, et cetera, et cetera. You just know what you can enjoy because of it. In the same way, you may not necessarily see everybody's predilections and ways of being, et cetera. Some people don't register for you in your consciousness. You don't, even though they may be around you, you don't notice them until and unless they trigger something that already exists in your consciousness. Because all we are ever doing is meeting ourselves. And we meet ourselves in 3 ways. You've heard me talk about the 3-way mirror. It's a concept that was created by Kenya Stevens. The 3 mirrors are the patterns of the past, the things that Maybe somebody reminds you of something you've done or that you've seen done in the past. And so it triggers you in that or positive way. I'm not saying that it's got to be one. So when you, for example, somebody that says, oh, I give, and I don't get anything in return, that's actually not lawful. There's no such thing as giving and not receiving. No such thing in the metaphysical, physical universe. And so if you feel like you're over giving and that you're not receiving, there's something that you're not recognizing in that exchange. Maybe you're expecting something from a person, or maybe you're expecting it to come back the way you gave. And when somebody bothers you, when it triggers you, when you notice something, when you judge something about somebody else, etc., usually that is, like I said, those three mirrors: the pattern, the proclivity, meaning you do it too, meaning you are braggadocious also, meaning you take up space as well. So when somebody else does it, you're like, ugh, right? Or do it, but you would like to. You actually can see how this can expand your life, your livelihood. So one of the examples that I use with people all the time, and this is not a political statement, by the way, just so you know, is for the longest time, from the time that he came out with The Apprentice, Donald Trump has been a trigger for me, right? Independent of politics. That's not what that's about. But it's because I know his story, his business biography. I know that he was basically just riding daddy's coattails. And if he would have just let that money alone, he would have been like a for real billionaire and not have to fudge numbers and evade taxes and whatever. Like you could have just sat on it and you would have still been all right. So it bothers me that somebody can get this much credit and this much notoriety and and they don't even deserve it. They haven't even done anything except just write on somebody else's name. So when I noticed my judgment, I was like, where's that coming from, Monikah? Do you wish you could ride the coattails of your father's name? Do you wish you could just like somebody just give you something that you haven't deserved? You wish you could do that? Life would be easier for you if somebody just handed it to you like they handed him an inheritance. And so when you can be with yourself in that honest way of recognizing your patterns, your proclivities, or your potential, negative or positive, then you can understand your judgments about people and be empathetic towards the person you're judging and towards yourself for doing it. Because it's not like judging people is a bad thing. It's just a teaching tool. So when we're judging folks, this is a great opportunity for us to have, it's an invitation to self-examine, is what I'm saying. Laura, you have something. Come on up.
Yes. Good morning, Grand Rising. Thank you for this conversation this morning. And something that I've been practicing that I learned from my spiritual community is excavating my limiting beliefs. So I've started to write going deep to see why am I having these thoughts, why I'm having any judgments, and really going deep to, as they say, excavate, be honest with myself. Mm-hmm. But what I'm seeing for myself in this conversation about, I don't brag or, blow my own horn, because it's coming from my blind spots. So I never had a voice growing up. I didn't know my worth. Mm-hmm. I was told daily that I did not worth anything, so all of these things that in the so inside it's like stamped in my brain. So I've just grown up and I was always told, be humble, be patient and stuff like that. So all of these things going on in my head, I keep things to myself. Mm-hmm. And then I was cycling with some women of another ethnicity who in our cycle, before they start, they would say, what do you have to brag about? And at first I, then they explain it's about what positive thing you did. What happened for you this week? So I got another meaning of what it is to brag about positively. So I'm not, for sake of time, I'll complete here, and I thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for that share. That was good. Awesome. Florence, you got something?
Well, yes. So yes, I have started doing well recently. Just had a situation where I'm also seeing it has to be in me, and I'm always now checking. As soon as I get triggered, I just come on and sit down and say, well, what's that? What does that mean? Got very upset, even to the point of my blood pressure going up just recently. And then I said, okay, where is that in you? Whatever has been triggered, where is that in you? And I realized that it is there. Uh, what I was being triggered about is really there. And then I decided to give grace to the person and give grace to myself in that situation. So with that, I am just noticing myself. And I also have a community that we have to say each week. We have that meeting on Wednesdays, and we have to just say what good happened for you this week, or where did you shine, and it's really wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Michelle says in the chat, in Mary Kay meetings, a big part is crow time, where you are expected to share your wins from the previous week. And I think that's amazing. And it dovetails very nicely to the homework I'm going to give you for this week, which is for you to take some time. And for some of us, we are decades into this life, darling. So I'm going to ask you to break it down decade by decade, 0 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, like that, until you get to your current age. And what was a big thing that you accomplished, or a breakthrough that you had mentally or emotionally or spiritually for yourself during that decade? I want you to start looking at the data points. You already have evidence of your greatness. You already have evidence of your loving nature. You already have evidence of your abundance. You may not be looking at it because you're so used to maybe looking at where you're missing, or where the gap is, or where you still have so far to go, et cetera, et cetera. But I want you to go data collecting for a second and go see in your own biography, what did you accomplish? How did you stretch and win? How did you stretch and lose and develop resilience? Because it's not just about it being a pretty picture. Sometimes our greatest breakthroughs come from our failures. And so go through that, examine that, and then make it a habit to do that, to Michelle's point, of every week. What did I accomplish this week? Or what was a big celebration? What was a big win from the previous week? Because it will fortify you for the times when you feel like you're in the middle of failure, or in the middle of a dark night of the soul, as it were. Those previous celebrations can be grist for the journey, and can support you in developing resilience and patience when things don't seem to be ending in a dark night of the soul. So thank you, everybody, for being here. I appreciate you. Remember to love generously, give of yourself, your time, your love, and attention. I want you to eat more plant-based, stress less, get yourself 7 or 8 hours of sleep. And if you are a feminine dominant being, get yourself 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Feminine dominant beings need more sleep, because there's a lot more going on in our physical bodies, and the emotional invisible labor that we do in the world. So you need more sleep. And I want you to exercise practice, child. Go ahead and twerk, even if it's in the privacy of your own home. You don't have to do it in public, okay? Don't embarrass yourself. And then, of course, audit your assumptions. Always check yourself before you wreck yourself. We love
Excellent job, everyone. Excellent job.